Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to our session. So again, obviously creativity, AI, tech, all those things connected. So we're in an era right now where creative ideas are being generated, they're being scaled and optimized faster than ever before. But how do you actually keep those ideas interesting and relevant and make sure that they mean something? So today's conversation, we're going to navigate between soul and scale. And I'm going to introduce the panelists that I have with me today. So to my right, I have Nivi Gupta. She is the VP of Growth and Marketing at Etsy. And Kevin Hine is the Chief Growth Officer at Giphy. Who doesn't use Giphy? And who doesn't shop at Etsy? And Michael Komasinski is the CEO and board member at Criteo. And then Josh Line is the Chief Marketing Officer at Yahoo. Woo! All right, good. Okay, so I'm going to set us up and just sort of ask a very broad question right now, and then we're going to get into a little bit more specificity with each one of our panelists. So, as AI continues to shape content creation, how are you balancing automation and efficiency with creative authenticity? And then when do you say this really needs to have a human touch? So, any one of you can go first.
I can go. Um, uh, so, as you introduced me, I work for Etsy. We are the global online marketplace connecting 6 million sellers with 90 million buyers looking for that very unique, personalized, handmade, handpicked item. So we actually start with the human touch, right? We have been in business for 20 years now, and we have stood for the home for inspiration and creativity, human creativity, so much so that it's in our mission is to keep commerce human. So the question we ask ourselves is actually a little bit of the flip, which is how do we enhance and how do we leverage AI to actually enhance the human side of commerce? And the intention is for AI to augment human creativity and not to replace it. So amplify it, not replace it. So everything starts with the human touch.
Lovely. So, amplify, not replace it. Anyone else?
Yeah, first I want to state the Patrick Schwarzenegger lead-in. Thank you all. We programmed it that way. I've bought great stuff off Etsy, so I love what you all do. I want to be clear, I'm a big fan of AI. I think it's going to do a lot more greatness than it will do damage, and that might be controversial. Hopefully it sits well with most of you. When it comes to Giphy, and I imagine all of you are familiar with GIF usage, most people smile because it's fun. We think AI could do a very powerful job at content creation, but where the context steps in, that's where we're going to need humans. It's what Giphy was built upon. Any GIF that you use off our platform, you know, it's that moment. If you're watching White Lotus, yes, I'm going to do those tie-ins the entire time because he was here. That was actually a really big moment on the platform this past season. And you need that human touch. And without that, AI can't do that quite yet.
Great. Anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add. I think it's from a Criteo standpoint, I probably represent the scale part of the soul and scale part of this panel. But they go hand in hand, right? And so we need to design our platform to allow humans to monitor the breadth of activity that marketing takes place in today, right? Our ecosystem's only getting more and more fragmented every week. And we need platforms that help us monitor that as marketers. And so at Criteo, we really think about designing the right reporting that allow people to do that efficiently. We think about where creative is showing up at different touch points and how we design the system to optimize for the most effective outcomes. And really just like serving the creative, I would say, but in a landscape that I think is increasingly impossible for people to manage, you know, through a lot of sort of hands-on, you know, labor. So I think AI is our friend when it comes to the sort of increase in complexity, and that's what we're trying to serve.
Great. Josh?
Sure. I'm at Yahoo, and I like to think in frameworks. And for me, it's sort of the what and the why. I think AI is really going to help in amazing ways with the what and our workflows. But the human touches the why, right? And when you're thinking about setting strategy, Only humans can do that. When you think about managing a brand, and a brand that's been around as long as Yahoo, 30 years, I think it's critically important, the human element of that. And Yahoo's a brand that is quirky, is fun, and that's human. That's innately human. We were walking the work earlier today, and while AI is probably touching many of those creative concepts and executions, fundamentally that's all coming from humans. Those great creative ideas, those award-winning ideas, come from the human touch.
I think I might know the answer to this, but let's see. Because you said the human touch is the why. And my follow-up question for all of you is, can the human touch be templated? Or is it something you just can't mess with? Like, it has to be human. I feel like the answer is no.
Okay, I'll jump in here. I can't.
Okay.
So I again, as
Provocateur.
an AI proponent, I do think in a shorter period of time of what we're comfortable with, AI will be able to do that in certain places. And I think your Deepak Chopra example is a really good one. Do you want to, now I've switched it, sorry. Do you want to go through that? I think that's a great example.
I was just at a panel yesterday, and Deepak Chopra was just saying AI can do a few things. I shared this with Nivea actually yesterday too. It can help you. If you put the right prompt in, right, it can give you the information, it can do the analysis for it, but it's never going to come up with a big idea, according to Deepak. That's going to take introspective and really the person taking their time thinking about it, and then all of a sudden they're taking a bath, this is what he really said, and then they have the aha moment or the eureka moment. So that was his point on it, that it just wasn't going to kind of get there from a creativity standpoint.
I'll go there then. So like, I actually agree with that. I think I reflect on my own usage, right? So I use, one of my AI assistants a lot as a research assistant, which keeps my learning curve super fast. I don't get stuck on acronyms or concepts or how does this pipe or that functionality work. Keeps me unstuck, keeps my learning curve going fast, as well as can be a conversation assistant, right? It actually is interesting to bounce ideas off my assistant. It's not helping me come up with them. But if I'm alone on a flight, I'm not going to talk to the person next to me about, how a new product design should work. It's an incredible way of prompting and actually exploring your own thought process. I think it's quite useful that way. But they're still my ideas in the end.
Right, exactly. It just kind of helps you do things, I think, quicker and faster. I use it a lot at my team as well for analysis, marketing analysis of any of our campaigns, new ideas for a subject line. I would say subject line, things like that.
And as you framed it, right? Can it be templatized? I mean, imagine a world in which everything all of us do is templatized. I mean, what sets us apart then? What differentiates us? So you actually don't want the template solution. You do want the original.
Yeah. Okay, so speaking of non-templates, Giphy. So Giphy, I use Giphy all the time in my messaging, and I have a fairly young team, and I'm not so old, but I'm older than them. And I think they love that I'm always using Giphy. I just have always done that. So I think it is literally the native language of culture. So how do you see the role, Kevin, of Giphy when it comes to microcontent? So GIFs and memes and things like that, all that new content, when at the same time, we're running out of time. Like, time is a premium right now, and our attention spans are so low.
So Giphy plays well into the attention economy, because I guess if you all stand back and think the last time you sent a GIF, A, most people remember it. B, it was an emotional trigger, like a positive one in some type, where you couldn't use longer form language to explain it. And this is at work or personally. So that moment, I think, is going to get amplified even more because of our attention. Like, honestly, if we weren't so engaging right now, would you be able to pay attention? You'd be staring at your phone. And within GIFs of how they're sent, it's one of the most powerful ways to keep in touch emotionally. And then on the relevancy side, I mean, Giphy was born on being relevant, like a little ahead of the curve of something that is cool. And that I don't think will ever go away, nor do I think AI will play a role in understanding the important micro moments in culture before they become cool. Like, how do you even sense that? Sure, there could be trends, but that's the power of Giphy as a platform, of what we leverage the most within our knowledge and our insights.
Nivi, question for you. And you touched on this a little bit just now. So Etsy's mission is to keep commerce human, which is beautiful. And if you've ever seen the billboards that they've had in New York and London, I think, where they feature the sellers and their products, it's so human and it's just beautiful because it brings that humanity to the product. So how do you stay true to this mission in a landscape that's dominated by performance marketing and AI and driven targeting? And what does that human first growth marketing look like at Etsy or in 2025? I'd love to hear that from you guys as well.
Yeah, I can start. So, um, human first growth marketing. The human is obviously the starting point. As I said before, the billboards that you've seen actually feature our sellers. Giant billboards, New York, San Francisco, London, covering buildings. And we wanted to elevate the role of our seller, the human that creates the items that we all love and buy. So human growth marketing is while leveraging AI, helps the human, the seller, do what they do best, which is their makeup process, their craft. Our sellers are not all great marketers, and yet, we have 100 million items on the site. So how do we, Etsy, take this content, these items, and curate them in a way that can then be ingested by our media partners in a meaningful way and then shown to buyers based on their interests and their intent? So we've used AI there to help us kind of extricate details like price and size and color and things like that from this inventory and surface it to buyers. So it's really taking, again, what the human built and created and amplifying it. So that, to me, is the human side of it. Another example that's actually shown great results for us that I can share is it's human to make our site more accessible. And yet when the sellers put in images and pictures of their items, they're not doing the alt text that is then accessible to everybody, right? That's not their craft. Like the example of the employee at your company at IIB you shared yesterday, his craft is making art. He's not thinking about, how to optimize it for SEO and alt text and this and that. So we've used AI to help us develop the alt text that hence makes the items, the art, more searchable. So that is, again, keeping the human at the center, but using AI to amplify.
Mm-hmm. Anyone want to build on that?
I was going to give an example from Yahoo, which Yahoo Finance, it's a big, broad platform. It's the #1 finance destination on the internet. But within that, there's the full spectrum of people using it, right? Like you've got, people who are just checking their portfolio and just trying to keep track of what's happening. And then there's, people that are real experts in finance who are leveraging it and using it in different ways. And so I think the ability to go in and not just segment, but truly personalize and tailor the messaging is a huge opportunity, something we're very leaned into. By the same token, we don't want to lose, the base position and proposition of Yahoo Finance, which is for everyone. So I think, back to sort of the fundamentals of marketing, it's like we have a position, we're casting a net, and within that, there's many different needs underneath that and many different insights that can inspire the creative. And so that's how we sort of think about it conceptually.
Yeah, you jumped right into my next question, kind of, because I was going to get into segmenting and going to more of taking that traditional storytelling, making it more personalized and AI driven. So what do you think we're gaining from that? Or what do you think we're losing from going more personalized and story driven?
I think one of the challenges with personalization is it's almost as big of a buzzword as AI is right now. So when you talk about personalization and then you talk about scale, I think there's a bit of a conflict there. But when it comes to content creation, I'm going to tie in AI a little, so I'm going a little off path. Apologies. So we talk about having the kernel of an insight that we have at Giphy with over 1 billion people a day using the product. When we take that insight and we work with partners to create content that is sticky and relevant, that is the human part. But like I think a lot of our partners, we're using AI tools to then enhance that. So it's insight, then we create the base of the content, and then we use AI to expand on it. And then we are driven by keywords and intent to the audiences. But once that amplification engine starts, then the algorithm could push it out. So it feels personalized as far as the content creation, and then it gets the scale through the algorithm and the engine itself. Combined a couple of things there.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'm really interested these days in sort of the way that we serve audiences in a performative and algorithmic way, upper funnel. Right, so much of this was built sort of at the lower end of the funnel around performance, conversions, and sort of that hyper personalization. But kind of like what Josh was saying, I think upper funnel is about discovery, and I think the early versions of this were very like echo chambery, right? So you'd sort of give up some kind of a signal, and instantly you'd get sort of rabbit hole down a certain set of content. I think the new frontier with AI powering it really is about keeping that discovery journey going and offering up a broader set of sort of content, different options, different products that make it much more open-ended and allow people, I think, to do a little more self-discovery in terms of then how they want to move through some kind of a customer journey. That's actually something we're quite focused on at Criteo, having come from kind of the bottom of that process. It's a whole new frontier, and again, without AI, we wouldn't be able to move our product set up funnel like that because that's like new content, new algorithms. So it's great. It's great for our business, and hopefully it serves the needs of our retail clients who are trying to create shopper delight sometimes before they even know what they want.
Mm-hmm.
I would just add that while personalization super powerful, we're getting to much stronger utilization of it through the funnel. There's still a whole host of things. We have Motel Yahoo down the beach. That can't be personalized. It's an experience that everyone's having together. And there's a whole, outdoor. Outdoor is another area where, as much as it's getting so much better in terms of programmatic and those sorts of things, we prioritize it because it reaches everybody. And so there's a whole host of things where you can't personalize, and so you have to be very thoughtful about the brand you're building at the top. That's for everybody, and then sort of the needs underneath that for your consumers.
Actually, I was going to ask you that question, Josh. So I think I mentioned this to you earlier. So your CRO was at the NewFronts, and he said, what did he say exactly? He said, Yahoo isn't just on the internet, it is the internet. And that is just a big, bold statement, which I absolutely love. But again, your brand's 30 years old, and now you're there as the chief marketing officer. So you're bringing together content, tech, customers, everything. How are you using that creative intelligence to reach people in this new kind of world that you have? And how do you make sure it's not just reaching them, but you're also being relevant in that process?
I'm going to steal from Rob, our CRO. Again, we have incredible scale. 9 out of 10 U.S. internet users interact with Yahoo every month. So incredible scale. But the other thing that Yahoo has that's really unique, and again, Rob calls it the holy trinity of data, because we have mail, we have data from mail, we have data from search behavior, and we have data from browsing and consuming content. And that trio is super powerful. Obviously, it's powerful for marketing, and it's obviously powerful for Yahoo Ads and the Yahoo DSP. And so I think we leverage that in all sorts of ways, both for our clients, but also for our own marketing.
Mm-hmm. Great. Michael, so I think you talked a little bit about this. We can talk a little bit more. So commerce, media, and AI are big pieces of Criteo, big focus for you. How are you using that data and machine learning to not only target, but also tell smarter stories?
Yeah.
Your storytelling.
Yeah, so it is my favorite buzzword of the week, which is agentic commerce. I do believe in this. I think it will be a thing. And Criteo, I think, will power those solutions because it starts with the data set that we have, right? So 4.5 billion products. We see 720 million shoppers every day. We see $1 trillion of e-commerce transactions a year. So you have to have that scale of data to start to power these types of agents, right? But I think that that if we harness that the right way, I think that can start to show up either in the foundation for recommendation models in agents themselves, or I think a lot of our brands and retailers are going to want to stand up their own front ends and we'll power those with that. But I do believe that in some ways, like, agents will be the new websites. You're going to need a front end to this new channel, and it's going to need to be powered by your IP. That IP needs to be data that's clean, scaled, accurate, and up to date. So I'm really excited to see how this plays out. And then, of course, there will be advertising that comes into that. Probably in much the same way that search advertising evolved from organic to paid. And that's just going to be a fascinating sort of evolution of a really powerful new front end in marketing.
Yeah, I think everyone's talking about the agentic agent now when it comes to shopping. But my question really is, are you then marketing to the agent or are you marketing to the shopper? How does that work?
Both. Yeah, I think there'll be a clearing of showing up in an agent environment. And I do believe that there will be human interaction, back to the point of this panel, to sort of finish the process. I had my own experience for this looking for bike tires a couple of weekends ago. I hit a flat on a trip and was frantically looking for bike tires with my agent. Couldn't quite pull the trigger. I didn't like the recommendation. But again, you see how you start to use these things personally, and they can save you a lot of time on the front end, and you're either comfortable concluding that transaction in the agent itself, or you're going to take that off on your own to complete that in a way that you're comfortable with and certain of.
I think that's going to be a really interesting moment when we're using a search engine, Yahoo, or another one, and we're using an agent, and then we're using our own, like even with the bike tire, and we combine those three. At some point, it's going to tip where the agent's going to be able to do it all really well. And I think that's going to be, and then you power that all the way through. I think that's going to be a really interesting moment when that happens, when an agent does it from beginning to end and it's accurate and it links to the right place, or it doesn't link anywhere. And it's just going to change everything.
Yeah, I think the foundations, though, of what's needed, the underpinnings are pretty much the same, whether it's human or agent. Your data has to be really, really rock solid. Your data has to be complete. It has to be clean. And then you need very similar signals that you need on your site today for SEO. You need trusted content. You need reviews. You need good visuals. So in terms of the action that we have to take, it's quite similar in that sense, no matter who you're talking to.
So we're going all agent now, search, agent, everybody. Okay, so this is perfect for the next question because it's open for everybody. If a brand came to you today and said, oh my God, all this technology, all this agent stuff, how do I keep my soul intact when this world is full of automation? What's one tip or piece of advice you would give to the brand?
Well, first I'd say my advice would be to the people behind the brand and the leaders of the brand. We're in a period of tremendous change, probably the most rapid change we've seen in marketing, and we're gonna have to make a lot of decisions. And for the leaders, make sure you're driving that change, that you're in charge of that change, and that you're making thoughtful decisions about it. I think we're all reading all sorts of things about negative implications of this, but we get to decide what the implications of it are. So I think as leaders, the people behind brands, being really thoughtful during this period feels very important. If you look back at the history of the internet, there's lots of moments where there were good decisions and bad decisions made, and fortunately, you can course correct when you make a bad decision. And I think we'll sort of be following that path for sure.
Yeah, similarly, your soul is your soul. So, but I think you have to understand the tech and you have to understand the ecosystem, because your brand will be a representation or an accumulation of how you're showing up. And you need to understand those touch points and sort of, how your brand expresses through those. But I think that's very doable, but it takes work and effort, and people have to continue to learn the new frontier.
With our best partners, we're finding we're getting the best results when they're authentic. And I know that's cliche, but we're a fun brand. Like, we have a lot of positive feelings across the entire Giphy library. And when we connect with brands that way of like, be authentic, and you start with the brief in the beginning and it's about authenticity. I know this is everyone's goal for the most part. And you find that kernel and that insight and then map that to the strengths of how joy is shared across Giphy and through GIFs. This is really cheesy, but like magic happens. It does, because we're new in the advertising space for a couple of years, but we're so well known as far as foundationally. And then how do you transfer what you know as a GIF when you're sending it to somebody? And then if you're a brand, what do you then do? And the answer is yes, you do the same thing. You make something shareable and you power it through emotion and you're authentic. And those are by far our best relationships with brands and how we guide them.
Just to build on that really quickly, I think one of the open questions, and there's so much conversation about Gen AI and the content that's created from it. And I think one of the big open questions is how will consumers respond, right? How will they respond? Will they not care? Will they not notice? Obviously, it's getting pretty good at creating certain types of things. But maybe they'll prioritize authenticity. Maybe they will prioritize things that that are different, and certainly see that. You certainly see that in the kind of narrative and press conversation around this. But I think you also see it from consumers. We've all heard of the AI slop on social media. I think people are attuned to this, and certainly younger audiences are attuned to it. So I think there's open questions about some of the implications, and that maybe is one that gets back to creativity and the part of it that can't be automated, that can't fundamentally come from AI.
Nidhi?
Yeah, speaking of cheesy, this may sound a little cheesy, but don't lose the humanity. Don't lose the authenticity. At the end of the day, we make purchase decisions based on shared beliefs, shared ideologies, shared love, and that is what binds us together as humans, consumers, humanity. So I would say don't lose that. You said soul to scale. Recently, Professor Marcus Collins, I think is his name, visited us at Etsy, and he said, first the soul, then the sale. So you've got to get it right, the values and the authenticity, and then you talk about the selling.
Perfect. I think we're at time. So authenticity, soul, be human. I think what we learned today is that creativity is always going to exist, and it's just these machines that are going to help us sort of scale. So thank you, everyone, for a really great conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.